They had the looks, the talent, the spotlight, and then nothing. Hollywood is known for its meteoric rises and brutal downfalls. But some stories don't end with scandal, retirement, or reinvention. Some stories simply vanish. A face that once lit up the silver screen fades into static. A name whispered at premieres is suddenly absent. No explanation, no farewell tour, just silence. Behind the studio lights and curated smiles, there are stars whose disappearances were never explained. Careers that stopped mid-sentence, lives that derailed into mystery, tragedies that were never properly investigated or were deliberately swept under the rug. In an industry built on control, some exits are too strange, too quiet, too orchestrated to feel accidental. Some said they retired, some were declared dead, others were found in motels, garages, behind locked doors. A few were never found at all. Their faces remain frozen in black and white headshots, the only thing time couldn't erase. But what if these weren't just personal tragedies? What if something or someone made them disappear? In this episode, we open the forgotten files. We trace the fading echoes of 20 stars who left Hollywood in ways that defied logic, defied closure, and in some cases, defied reality. Which name will haunt you most? And do you think they chose to leave or were they erased? Fact Hasson, Gene Tierney, The Vanishing of a Goddess. At her peak, Gene Tierney was more than a movie star, she was an ideal. The face behind Laura, the tragic siren in Leave Her to Heaven, Tierney exuded grace and magnetism, yet behind those perfect features was a woman silently unraveling. In 1943, Tierney gave birth to a daughter who was born deaf and mentally disabled, a devastating blow, linked to a fan who had exposed her to rubella while pregnant. Tierney blamed herself. Hollywood never paused. She kept working. She smiled through premieres. But the emotional damage was irreversible. Nervous breakdowns followed. Electric shock therapy stole pieces of her memory. Rumors circulated. Gene was unreliable, fragile, damaged. The industry turned cold. By the early 1950 seconds, Tierney was quietly dropped from leading roles. She disappeared from A-lists, re-emerging sporadically in small projects, almost as if testing whether the world had forgotten her or still judged her. Her final vanishing act wasn't in a film, but in real life. She retreated from Hollywood entirely, living in Texas, selling cosmetics in a department store, unrecognized by most who walked past her. Was this her way of reclaiming agency, or the final proof that Hollywood only loved its stars while they shined? Fact #2. Dorothy Stratton. Stardom interrupted by a bullet. She was Playboy's Golden Girl, the 1980 Playmate of the Year, dubbed the next Marilyn Monroe. Dorothy Stratton had just begun making waves in Hollywood when her life was extinguished in a single brutal act. Discovered at a Dairy Queen, Dorothy's rise was meteoric. She posed, she dazzled, she landed roles in films like Galaxina and They All Laughed. Studios saw her as the new face of sensual innocence. Behind the curtain, though, danger simmered. Her husband and manager, Paul Snider, the man who discovered her, became increasingly possessive and paranoid. As Dorothy began pulling away, finding her independence, Snider's control spiraled into violence. On the 14th of August 1980, Dorothy was found murdered in their shared apartment. She had been raped, shot in the face, and mutilated. Snider then turned the gun on himself. She was just 20 years old. Hollywood tried to move on quickly. Some called it a cautionary tale. Others simply didn't mention her again. But those who knew her saw something darker. The industry had capitalized on her image, encouraged her rise, but did little to protect her from the man lurking just behind the spotlight. Was Dorothy Stratton a tragic accident or the collateral damage of a system that values beauty more than safety? Fact #3. Barbara Payton. From red carpet to pavement, Barbara Payton was once the embodiment of 1950 sex appeal, a platinum blonde with piercing eyes, and a smirk that dared you to look away. Studios courted her, leading men fought over her. She had it all until it all vanished. Payton's downfall wasn't slow, it was catastrophic. A love triangle between actor Franchot Tone and brawler Tom Neal spiraled into a public fistfight, leaving Tone hospitalized and Payton tabloid fodder. Roles dried up, door closed. But it wasn't just scandal that ended her career, it was her defiance. Payton refused to play the good girl. She drank openly, she spoke her mind. Hollywood doesn't forgive women who step out of line. By the 1960 seconds, Payton was unrecognizable. She was arrested multiple times for prostitution and passing bad checks. In her final years, she wandered the streets of Hollywood, sometimes barefoot, often drunk, offering autographs in exchange for change. When she died of heart and liver failure at 39, few noticed. Her star had dimmed long before her life did. No tribute, no headlines, just silence. How does someone go from headlining movies to dying alone in a Skid Row hotel in less than a decade? Fact hash 4. Carol Landis, the letter no one understood. She had the looks of a goddess and the discipline of a soldier. Carol Landis wasn't just a pretty face, she entertained troops in World War II, traveled the world, and gave Hollywood her everything. But in 1948, she was found dead in her bathroom, dressed immaculately, with a bottle of Seconal beside her, and a note that solved nothing. The official story was suicide, depression, heartbreak, a career that had stalled. But then came the whispers. The note she left behind had been edited before police arrived, and Rex Harrison, her married lover at the time, was the last person to see her alive. He waited hours before calling anyone. The studio moved fast. No scandal, no questions, just silence. Landis had been outspoken, intelligent, and unwilling to play the submissive starlet. She clashed with executives. She dated power players. She challenged narratives. In a town built on image, she became too real. Some say her death was a cry for help. Others believe it was something darker, a cover-up, a sacrifice, a price she paid for loving the wrong man in a system that punished inconvenient emotions. Why did the studios insist on revising her final word? Fact 5. Lupe Velez, Hollywood's Spitfire, silenced. Known as the Mexican Spitfire, Lupe Velez was a firecracker, bold, unpredictable, magnetic. She stormed Hollywood with a presence that couldn't be ignored. But her legacy has been reduced to a cruel joke. The myth that she died with her head in a toilet. The truth is more brutal and far more tragic. In 1944, Velez was pregnant, unmarried, and trapped. Her lover, actor Harold Maresh, refused to marry her. The studio distanced itself. Catholic and proud, Lupe saw no way forward. She arranged candles, flowers, and a beautiful gown. She overdosed in her bed, hoping to stage a final, perfect exit. Then came the tabloids. Columnists twisted the story. One joke claimed she vomited and fell into the toilet, a lie that stuck for decades. Her carefully orchestrated farewell was turned into slapstick. But why? Some believe it was punishment for being too bold, too foreign, too loud. Lupe refused to conform, and when she died, the system mocked her. Was the toilet story just tabloid invention or a deliberate act of humiliation? Fact hash 6. Inger Stevens. Fame in the spotlight. Death in the dark. She was cool, blonde, and elusive, the kind of beauty Hollywood worshipped in the 1,960 seconds. Inger Stevens rose fast, with roles in The Farmer's Daughter and Hang 'Em High, but just as quickly, she vanished from the screen, and then, from life. In 1970, Stevens was found collapsed on her kitchen floor, dead from barbiturate poisoning. The coroner ruled it suicide. No note, no warning. But the mystery wasn't just how she died, it was what she'd hidden while living. Only after her death did it emerge that Inger had secretly married Ike Jones, a black producer, in 1961. In segregated America, a white actress married to a black man risked career death. So, she kept it hidden. No one in Hollywood knew. Friends said she was depressed, but there were no signs. Others whispered about career pressures, studio manipulation, and a growing isolation. She'd become difficult. They said the industry's favorite euphemism for women who speak up. She was 35. Was her death just the quiet end of a lonely life? Or was it the final act of a woman who had spent a decade hiding from a world that wouldn't accept her truth? Fact hash 7. Susan Peters, a star crippled by fate, forgotten by fame. She was poised to become the next great dramatic actress of the 1,940 seconds. With her Oscar-nominated role in Random Harvest, Susan Peters captured Hollywood's attention, a subtle performer with haunting eyes and quiet intensity. But one New Year's Day in 1945, everything changed. While on a hunting trip with her husband, actor Richard Quine, a rifle accidentally discharged. The bullet struck Susan in the spine. She was paralyzed from the waist down. She was 23. Studios offered sympathy, but not roles. Peters fought to continue acting, even accepting parts written for characters in wheelchairs. But the offers slowed, the audiences vanished, and eventually, so did she. Her husband left. Her body grew frail. In 1952, Susan Peters died of starvation, voluntary or otherwise. She was 31. Some say she simply lost the will to live. Others believe she was starved not by her own hands, but by an industry incapable of accepting beauty redefined by tragedy. If she had been a man, would Hollywood have written her a comeback? Fact hash 8. Gail Russell, the ghost actress who drank to stay visible. Gail Russell wasn't supposed to be in pictures. She had no acting ambitions, no thirst for fame, but Paramount liked her face, porcelain skin, melancholy eyes, and cast her in The Uninvited. Audiences fell in love. Studios saw a new Ingenue. Gail saw a nightmare. Cripplingly shy, she struggled on set. Studio executives forced her to drink whiskey to calm her nerves. Soon, she couldn't stop. The bottle became her co-star. By the 1,950 seconds, her career was collapsing. Public drunkenness, car crashes, mugshots. But she kept working sporadically, trying to clean up, trying to matter. Hollywood kept its distance. In 1961, she was found dead in a tiny Los Angeles apartment, surrounded by empty vodka bottles and piles of fan mail she never opened. The cause: heart failure linked to chronic alcoholism. She was 36. Her death wasn't sensationalized. It was mostly ignored. She was, by then, a ghost even before she died. Was Gail Russell undone by alcohol or by a system that taught her to drink in the first place? Fact #9. Dana Andrews, the slow fade of a leading man. Once the quiet backbone of post-war cinema, Dana Andrews carried films like Laura, The Best Years of Our Lives, and Where the Sidewalk Ends, with a restrained masculinity and deep moral conflict. He was the noir hero who didn't need to shout. But in real life, Andrews was struggling slowly, invisibly. Alcohol became his silent enemy. His drinking was never theatrical. It was secretive, steady, corrosive. Studios noticed. Offers diminished. Co-stars whispered. Directors looked elsewhere. By the 1,960 seconds, the man who once symbolized post-war American manhood was relegated to television appearances and forgettable films. His name faded from marquees. His face aged rapidly. His presence dull. But no scandal broke. No headlines marked his fall. He lived to 83, but spent decades in quiet exile, a star no longer recognized, a legacy blurred. Dana Andrews didn't crash. He dissolved. How many actors live long enough to watch themselves be forgotten and know it's happening? Fact #0. Linda Darnell, trapped in a house of fire and memory. She had one of the most luminous faces of the 1,940 seconds, all sculpted cheekbones and wide, expressive eyes. Linda Darnell rose from poverty to become a Technicolor icon, praised for roles in Forever Amber and A Letter to Three Wives. But the fire that made her famous eventually turned literal. In April 1965, Darnell was staying at her former secretary's house in Illinois. The reason? She wanted to escape Hollywood, even for a weekend. A cigarette ignited the living room couch. Linda tried to escape, but flames trapped her on the second floor. She was found alive, but with burns over 80% of her body. She died the next day. She was 41. The irony was brutal. She had become famous playing a woman who perishes in fire, Forever Amber, and her final role was in a TV show called Star Time. But in truth, Linda had been vanishing long before the fire. Studios considered her difficult. Roles dried up. Her beauty, once a ticket to stardom, became a curse as age set in. She had turned to alcohol. Hollywood had turned away. Was her death an accident or the final act in a slow burn of neglect? Fact #9. Frances Farmer, Hollywood's favorite disappearance. Frances Farmer was brilliance with a pulse. A classically trained actress who hated stardom, she refused to play by Hollywood's rules. She didn't smile for the cameras. She didn't flatter producers. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. And Hollywood punished her. In the 1,940 seconds, Farmer was arrested after a series of public breakdowns. What followed was something out of a horror film. Institutionalization, lobotomies, alleged, electric shock therapy. She spent nearly a decade in and out of mental hospitals, sometimes by court order, sometimes at her mother's insistence. When she re-emerged, the woman who returned was a husk. She took minor TV roles. She gave interviews, but she never explained everything, because she couldn't or wasn't allowed to. To this day, it's unclear what truly happened behind those locked hospital doors. Medical records were lost. Witnesses contradicted each other. Some say she was silenced. Others say she was simply sick. Both can be true. Hollywood tried to forget her. But the myth of Frances Farmer refuses to die. Was she a victim of mental illness or of an industry that called her mad because she wouldn't obey? Fact #2. George Reeves, the Superman nobody could save. To an entire generation of children in the 1,950 seconds, George Reeves was Superman. On screen, he stood for justice and hope. Off screen, he was trapped in a role he couldn't escape, one that may have killed him. On the 16th of June 1959, Reeves was found dead in his bedroom with a gunshot wound to the head. The death was ruled a suicide, but almost immediately, inconsistencies emerged. No fingerprints on the weapon, bruises on his body. Guests were in the house at the time and claimed they heard nothing. The gunshot wound was at a strange angle. Some witnesses later changed their stories. His fiancée, the socialite Leonore Lemon, was present and reportedly joked about his death before it happened. And then there was the question of Eddie Mannix, a powerful MGM executive whose wife had once been Reeves's lover. Mannix was rumored to have ties to organized crime. Reeves had become disillusioned with the Superman role. He struggled to find work elsewhere, but friends said he was planning a wedding. Others insisted he was depressed. The truth flickers between them, never quite settling. Was George Reeves a man who gave up or a man who knew too much and played a part he couldn't rewrite? Fact Hasson 3. Thelma Todd, the smile found in the garage. They called her the Ice Cream Blonde, a comedy queen of early talkies, sparkling with charm in films, alongside the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy. But Thelma Todd's final act wasn't funny. It was silent and cold. On the 16th of December 1935, Todd's body was found slumped in her car inside a closed garage above her Pacific Palisades restaurant. The cause: carbon monoxide poisoning. The ruling: accidental death, possibly suicide. But few bought it. She was wearing evening clothes and high heels, seated upright as if posing. She had just hosted a lavish party the night before, laughing and mingling. There were bruises on her body and a broken nose that mysteriously vanished from the coroner's report. Then came the suspects: a jealous ex, a mob-linked business associate. Even the restaurant's co-owner, Roland West, whose apartment overlooked the garage, was whispered about. Todd had threatened to go public about shady dealings in her cafe. Days later, she was dead. The studio rushed to preserve her image. Tributes flowed. Questions didn't. To this day, no one knows how or why she ended up in that garage. But Hollywood, ever the expert at narrative control, ensured her story was quietly sealed. Was it a careless mistake? A cry for help? Or a murder staged to look like everything else in Hollywood, carefully lit, tightly framed, and deeply false? Fact Hasson 4. Natalie Wood, the drowning that still echoes. Natalie Wood was born into the industry and died surrounded by it, quite literally. On the 29th of November 1981, she drowned off Catalina Island after a night aboard the yacht Splendor, shared with her husband Robert Wagner and co-star Christopher Walken. She was 43. The official story: she slipped while trying to secure a dinghy, but the autopsy found bruises inconsistent with a simple fall. Her body was discovered hours later, dressed in a nightgown and jacket, floating face down. Wagner had waited hours before calling for help. Witnesses reported arguing, tension, even screams. Walken gave vague, rehearsed answers. Wagner changed his account over time. The captain, Dennis Davern, later said Wagner was responsible, but by then, decades had passed. The case was reopened in 2011. In 2018, Wagner was named a person of interest. Still, no charges, no closure, just silence. Wood had a lifelong fear of dark water. She avoided it obsessively. And yet, that's where she died, with no cameras, no alibi, and no script to explain what really happened. Was it an accident, a tragedy, or a secret that the industry agreed never to surface? Fact Hasson 5. Jean Spangler, a note, a purse, and nothing else. Jean Spangler wasn't a household name yet. The 26-year-old actress had bit parts in films like Young Man with a Horn and had just wrapped a project with Kirk Douglas. She was young, striking, and climbing fast. Until one night in October 1949, she walked out of her Los Angeles apartment and was never seen again. Her purse was found near the entrance to Griffith Park. Inside was a note: "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." No last name, no context, just questions. Investigators probed Hollywood's underbelly: casting agents, nightclub owners, doctors, nothing. Her ex-husband was cleared. Her friends knew little. Douglas denied knowing anything. Kirk could have been anyone or no one. Jean's case faded from headlines. No body, no calls, no trace, just that cryptic note and a city unwilling to dig too deep. The trail went cold, and so did the attention. Decades later, her disappearance remains one of Hollywood's most chilling enigmas. A woman on the edge of fame, erased before her name could be remembered. Was she silenced by scandal, taken by someone powerful, or did she run from something that still hasn't? Fact Hasson X. Peg Entwistle, the girl who jumped from a dream. In 1932, Peg Entwistle became a symbol not of success, but of despair. The 24-year-old actress, frustrated by stalled roles and fading prospects, climbed Mount Lee, ascended the H of the giant Hollywoodland sign, and jumped to her death. Days later, a hiker found her body, along with a suicide note. "I am afraid I am a coward. I am sorry for everything." The press had a field day. Peg became a cautionary tale overnight, the girl who died chasing fame. But what the headlines missed was the quiet erasure that led her there. She had talent. Broadway reviews praised her. But when she came to Hollywood, the industry offered her little more than rejection, typecasting, underpay, empty promises. Her final film, 13 Women, was cut before release. Her name vanished from credits. Ironically, just a day after her death, a letter arrived at her apartment, a producer offering her a lead role in a film about a woman who takes her own life. Peg never read it. Did she leap from despair or from a system that told her over and over again that she didn't matter? Fact Hasson 7. Marie McDonald. The body that disappeared and returned. She was known as The Body, a nickname that reduced Marie McDonald's sharp wit and ambition to mere curves. A singer, actress, and former beauty queen, she lit up screens in the 1,940 seconds and 50 seconds, always playing the blonde bombshell. But her personal life was anything but glamorous. In 1957, Marie claimed she had been kidnapped at gunpoint. She reappeared hours later, disoriented, barefoot, with scratches and bruises. But investigators were skeptical. There were no ransom demands, no clear motive. Her story had holes and the press didn't believe her. They laughed. The tabloids called it a hoax. Her credibility collapsed. In truth, Marie struggled with depression and addiction. She was institutionalized multiple times. Her career faltered. She tried to return, but the studio system had already turned its back. In 1965, she was found dead in her home from an overdose. Accidental, they said, but her life was already a mystery wrapped in disbelief. Did she fake her own kidnapping, or was her story erased because no one wanted to believe a beautiful woman could be telling the truth? Fact Hasson 8. Anissa Jones, the child star who wasn't allowed to grow up. Anissa Jones was America's sweetheart. As Buffy in Family Affair, she charmed millions with her big eyes and button nose. But when the show ended, Hollywood ended with it. No more auditions, no more scripts. Just a 3-year-old girl no longer needed. She tried to go back to school, but classmates saw her as a has-been. She applied for jobs, but no one took her seriously. Her family life was fractured. Her father died, her mother struggled, and no one asked Anissa what she wanted to do next. She turned to pills. Friends said she was chasing numbness. On the 28th of August, 1976, at just 18, Anissa died from a lethal combination of cocaine, barbiturates, and PCP. The coroner called it one of the most severe overdoses in California history at the time. No studio released a statement. No retrospectives aired. She was quietly buried, fame reduced to a footnote. Anissa didn't choose to vanish. Hollywood stopped writing her lines and left her to find an ending on her own. When a child is taught that their only value is applause, what happens when the clapping stops? Fact Hassoninen. John Eric Hexum, killed by a prop or by pressure. He had the face of a matinee idol and the build of an action hero. John Eric Hexum was on the brink of stardom in the early 1,980 seconds, starring in the TV series Cover Up. Charismatic, funny, and by all accounts kind, he seemed unstoppable, until he stopped instantly. On the 12th of October 1984, during a break in filming, Hexum joked about the delays by picking up a prop gun loaded with blanks. He placed it to his head and pulled the trigger. The blast fractured his skull and sent bone fragments into his brain. He died days later. He was 26. The media called it an accident. Technically, it was. But many whispered that exhaustion played a part. The show was chaotic. Scripts were rewritten constantly. Hexum had been complaining about overwork and frustration with the production. Some say he was depressed. Others insist it was gallows humor gone tragically wrong. But the question lingered. Why was a blank gun still dangerous enough to kill? And why was no one held accountable? The studio moved quickly. The show was retooled. His character was replaced. Hollywood rolled on. Was John Eric Hexum a victim of chance or of a system that pushed young stars until the line between performance and reality blurred fatally? Fact #20. Brittany Murphy, the star who faded too fast. Brittany Murphy lit up every frame she appeared in, from Clueless to Girl, Interrupted to 8 Mile. She wasn't just charming, she was electric, offbeat, unpredictable. But in the final years of her life, That spark dimmed, and no one seemed to ask why. Her roles dried up. Rumors of erratic behavior spread. Paparazzi photos painted her as gaunt, haunted, unstable. She denied drug use. She looked tired. On the 20th of December 2009, Murphy collapsed in her bathroom. She was pronounced dead hours later. Cause: pneumonia, anemia, and multiple over-the-counter medications. Accidental, they said. Then came the questions. Her home was reportedly filled with mold. Her husband, Simon Monjack, refused an autopsy. Just 5 months later, he died under eerily similar circumstances, same house, same symptoms. Friends and family raised alarms. Conspiracies brewed. Some pointed to poisoning. Others hinted at a cover-up. But no answers came. Just silence again. Hollywood, which once adored her, seemed eager to forget. No tribute shows. No serious investigation. Just a final photo of her eyes wide, glassy, as if she saw something the rest of us still can't. Did Brittany Murphy die of natural causes, or did something far more unnatural unfold behind those locked Hollywood Hills doors? Bonus fact: Elizabeth Hartman, the voice that disappeared into silence. She was nominated for an Oscar at 23, a striking, introspective performance in A Patch of Blue, opposite Sidney Poitier. Elizabeth Hartman was hailed as one of the most promising actresses of her generation. She had a face made for close-ups and a voice that trembled with unspoken sorrow. And then, she was gone. No scandals, no arrests, no breakdowns in public view. She simply stopped appearing. Roles dwindled. Her name faded. Hollywood forgot her. And somewhere in that silence, Elizabeth unraveled. For years, she battled depression, not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that slowly chokes light. She worked quietly as a receptionist in a therapist's office in Pittsburgh. Few recognized her. Fewer asked why she wasn't still making films. On the 10th of June 1987, she walked out of her apartment window. 8 stories down, she was 43. There was no note, no final message. Just the brutal contrast between what she was and what she was left to be. Hollywood said little. Some didn't even remember her name. She was a ghost in the machine, too soft for the industry's sharp edges, too fragile to fake it. And perhaps the darkest question remains, was she lost to herself? Or did we let her vanish because her sadness didn't make for a good story? Hollywood is built on illusions of fame, of beauty, of permanence. But as you've just seen, some stars don't burn out. They vanish, sometimes quietly, sometimes violently, sometimes without leaving anything behind but questions. So we ask you, which of these disappearances unsettled you most? And more importantly, do you believe they left by choice, or were they pushed off stage when they no longer fit the script? Let us know in the comments. And if these shadows intrigue you, if you want to keep peeling back the layers, Hollywood tried to seal subscribe. Because behind the glamour lies something far colder, and it's not done whispering yet.